Our guy Junior getting some good FaceTime, taking the Penske Mobile down here to South Beach. Our coverage of Super Bowl 54 presented by Penske, the official transportation partner of CBS Sports HQ, just 2 days away from the Super Bowl. I'm Chris Hassel with Ryan Wilson, Jason Lockett-Fora, and Jonathan Jones. We are here to talk defense, and we're going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs, who really turned things upside down in the offseason, Jason. New defensive coordinator. They bring in Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu. Didn't make a huge difference the first 8-10 games or so, but they've been a different defense since.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever been in a Steve Spagnuolo defense will tell you it takes some time. And he was coming with some different concepts and different ideas to what they had been doing under Bob Sutton in the past. And look, I applaud Andy Reid for making what for him was a tough move, moving off of a guy in Bob Sutton who he's known basically for a lifetime. And bringing back Spags, somebody who he also had a lot of affinity for and direct knowledge with. But, yeah, I think it took time for that defense to settle down. I think once Tyrann Mathieu kind of fell in place, everything else seemed to do the same. And Chris Jones was injured a bit in the first half of the season as well, and I think that was obviously a huge factor. But you know, anybody who's still looking at this team through the prism of what they may have seen them do in September or October has missed the point that they have clearly evolved.
Absolutely. And so Tyrann Mathieu is playing all over the field. I don't know if you can call him a safety or a linebacker. You know, I mean, he is absolutely that hybrid. That has helped. You pick up around week 10, and that was when they lost to the Tennessee Titans, and they have not lost since then. Frank Clark, Harrison Butker both told me that was the turning point in the season. Frank Clark simply said it wasn't that Patriots game. He said, when's the last time we lost the Titans? We haven't lost since then. That was the turning point. And in that game, you remember Derrick Henry busted that 69-yard rush in the third quarter. And there were a couple other explosive plays where the defense, they weren't fitting their gaps, and they knew that they were better than that. And ever since then, they have really locked down. The explosive plays have been, they've decreased by an incredible amount, and that's why this team has not lost since then.
Yeah, no, we were talking to Chris Long here yesterday, and he was talking about the huge task this Chiefs defense is going to have, in part because of the running game in San Francisco and how wide are the ends going to play, how are they going to squeeze to slow down that running game. And there are concerns about the Chiefs running game, which ranked near the bottom of the league. But as JLC points out, that was a different time. Now we're in January, February, and it's a different football team. And you talk about Tyrann Mathieu. I think he is the glue that holds this all together. And one other name to watch, Juan Thornhill, their second-round pick rookie, got hurt end of the season. Daniel Sorensen has actually stepped up and played really well.
We talked about how they've changed from the first 10 to the last 8, and they haven't lost since. First 10, they were giving up about 24 points per game. The last 8, fewer than 16 points per game. But for the entire season, they were ranked 31st against zone running plays. How big of a concern is that against a really good rushing team that's on fire right now on the ground?
It's a huge concern. I mean, you can go back to when Mike Shanahan was younger than Kyle Shanahan, and him with Alex Gibbs on the offensive line coaching it up. And the outside zone, the pitch plays, the toss plays have been a staple of that offense since before Kyle Shanahan was born. It works. People know it's coming. They still can't stop it. Yeah, it's a concern. There's a lot of meat on that bone when you start talking about a Kyle Juszczyk and a George Kittle and what they do, you know, at the line of scrimmage in the run game. They've got wide receivers who will willingly give of themselves to block, to aid the run game. It's a concern, and I think Andy Reid comes out playing pinball football, playing at a pace, throwing to try to build the lead early to force Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo to keep pace.
And you have that speed at running back as well. So not only are the blockers blocking well, and they know this scheme, but you have guys who can get up to 22 miles per hour in about 3 seconds. And so you have it with Breida. You obviously have it with Mostert, two of the fastest, actually the 2 fastest ball carriers in the NFL playoffs so far. I spoke with Spags about this, and he said, listen, it's not necessarily about Breida or Mostert or whoever is at running back. It is about the offensive line and how they are blocking. And if you can't, you know, impose your will on that offensive line, he said it could start to snowball a little bit on us.
Yeah, and that's a concern that the 49ers just hold the ball and take all this time off the clock and keep the Chiefs offense on the field, But I always go back to the Texans game in the first round of the playoffs where they were down the Chiefs 24-0. And Andy Reid and JLC's been talking about this all week. He sees Patrick Mahomes over there. Patrick Mahomes has never had a bad game. He's had an average game, then they're usually pretty great games, and I think that will keep Andy Reid grounded as much as he might look concerned at any point, and knowing that he has a chance to come back. But if they get up the 49ers 10-0, then things sort of get interesting if we head towards halftime with that 10-0 lead, something like that.
Jason,
one thing I'm interested to see, too, is Terrell Suggs. He played against that scheme twice when he was with Arizona. I think San Francisco had 135 total yards rushing in those 2 games, only 34 in one of those games. Terrell Suggs can set the edge. I just have a feeling we're going to see more of Terrell Suggs in this game, which is almost certainly the final game of his career. We'll find out in 5 years from now if he's a Hall of Fame candidate or not. I know we'll be talking about that later in the show. But I think he's somebody to watch. I think he's got a couple of big plays left in him. He saw what Ray Lewis did, knowing, hey, my last game is a Super Bowl. Ray's his mentor. I think we'll see something out of Suggs on Sunday.
JLC has Terrell Suggs as his X factor on that defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. On the 49ers side, you don't have a Nick Bosa as your X factor. That's too easy. You have Kwan Williams, the cornerback.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we're talking about Andy Reid and that offense, and Andy Reid's he's going to run the ball a little bit to keep you honest, but we know he wants to have Mahomes slinging it all over the place, and he's got a multitude of people he can line up in the slot, and I think at some point he's going to find a matchup. Maybe it's Williams, maybe it's the tight end, maybe it's Hill, maybe it's Watkins, maybe it's Hardman, but somebody's going to be a handful for whoever San Francisco's lining up in the slot. You can only bracket so many people, and I think a guy like Williams in the secondary that's not overloaded with blazing speed, he's going to be tested. If he holds up, it could go a long way to deciding the game for the 49ers. If he doesn't, he's going to get a lot of volume coming his way because they will keep picking on him.
I'll keep it in the secondary. I am very interested to see how Emmanuel Mosley holds up, and he likely will get the start. Of course, they were going with Akello Witherspoon there for a while, and it turned out, you shouldn't be going with him. Mosley has gotten his hand on the ball in both playoff games, a converted quarterback from high school and undrafted out of Tennessee. I'm very interested to see what he does in that starting role because when the lights have been on him, he's been able to get his hands on the ball when called upon.
Yeah, I was talking to the 49ers cornerbacks coach on media night, and he said it's not necessarily one scheme is better than the other scheme. We know they have athletes, obviously, on the Chiefs' offense. It's about can you execute within the first 5 yards? Are your hands in the right place? Is your footwork sound? Because if not, if you keep beat, then it's a huge issue. And talking about someone like Williams, for example, the guys I want to see are in the middle of that defense. Quan Alexander, who's back from injury, and Fred Warner. They're two of the best linebackers in pass coverage. They're going to get a chance to prove that. And if they're stout in the middle of that defense, I think that'll help the guys on the edges and obviously the guys in the secondary.
Let's move up front then, and the guys that are creating the sacks for the San Francisco 49ers. Was here a couple of days ago, and Pete Prisco had a proclamation that Nick Bosa was going to have at least 2 sacks. Bryant McFadden agreed with him. Brady Quinn agreed with him. Do you guys agree that they're going to be able to get to Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah. I mean, they've got a multitude of options. They can generate pass rush with. They don't even need 4. They can generate pass rush with 3. They can play a lot of different games, a lot of stunts. They incorporate some of the old Jim Washburn wide 9 stuff that sometimes you see Bosa lined up. He looks like he's almost in the slot. They create these huge gaps, and then they can create runners to come into him through stunts and little games they play. The Chiefs' offensive line can have a really good day overall, and Mahomes is still going to get hit a few times. That's just a reality. I think the key, and when we had Joey Bosa on set yesterday, he was alluding to it. The key is when you think you have Mahomes contained and you think you've won that play, and then he's running 12 yards for a first down anyway. And he's been running a lot in the playoffs.
He has been running a lot. Here's the thing. The 49ers defense is faster than Patrick Mahomes. You know, he always jokes about how he's trying to emulate Lamar Jackson with a couple of his moves, doesn't have Lamar's speed. You know, he's a very mobile quarterback, there's no doubt. He's absolutely a dual-threat quarterback. But he's not all that fast. He's certainly not quick. And so this 49ers defense, especially Bosa, really maybe everybody on the front 4 would beat Patrick Mahomes in a 40. And so as long as you have somewhat of a contain on him, I think you're going to be able to track him down.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, they rush 4. We've talked about this. So it's not like they're going to start getting burned by Patrick Mahomes and decide to rush 2 or 3. They're rushing 4. That's what those guys do. And they're doing it with guys that they've lost players who are on that defensive line as part of that rotation who are not even there, and they're still the best defensive line out there. And I think, as JJ sort of alludes to, Patrick Mahomes isn't necessarily fast. He's shifty. And I would imagine if they take one huge hit, he might sort of recalibrate what he's doing in the pocket. But he's incredibly tough to get down no matter where he is, and it'll be a tall task. But, I mean, 2 sacks seems certainly reasonable.
San Francisco defense, first in the league in opponents' passing yards per game, first in the league in allowing 20-plus yard plays. They don't allow it to happen because they get home more times than they don't. We're coming back here in just a little bit from Super Bowl 54, the Miami Beach Convention Center. But for now, back to our Fort Lauderdale studios and Brandon Baylor.
All righty. Thank you, Chris, Ryan, Jason, and Jonathan. And don't forget to check out the Pick Six podcast. The fellas have been locked in down in Miami all week at Radio Row. Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson, John Breach. We get you ready as we head into the weekend and Super Bowl 54. Don't forget to download wherever you get your pod needs, the Pick Six podcast.